Hello everyone, friends. As we head toward the weekly close in the markets, we once again have important news flows ahead of us. There are news updates from around the world, from the domestic market, and from the US. First, I want to start with the data coming from the US. After the employment data released yesterday, the markets weren't too happy once again. The US employment data came in much better than expected, and the unemployment figures were also better than anticipated. But despite this, investors didn't really see any clear signs of a positive recovery in the US stock market, especially in tech stocks. The selling pressure is clearly continuing. And after these employment figures, the general consensus is this: employment in the US is still strong. That's why they're saying they're not in a hurry to cut interest rates. And of course, this will undoubtedly have effects on the markets. Gold is under partial selling pressure today because the issue of not cutting interest rates also affects gold. In an environment where interest rates are cut, gold would face even more upward movement. But gold isn't just affected by interest rate news or employment data from the US. Any kind of global chaos or strategic problem continues to trigger increases in gold. And we're truly in a period where problems around the world never seem to end. Of course, we can say that some countries are relatively a bit happier than others. For example, in the latest news from Japan, President Takaichi received a strong vote of confidence. In fact, they reached the highest vote percentages seen since World War II. Japanese stocks saw sharp increases. On another front, India and Russia are troubled when it comes to oil. Russia's troubled because it has to sell oil cheaply. India, on the other hand, is troubled about finding oil for itself. As you know, after the developments in Venezuela and Maduro's imprisonment, the U.S. took control of the oil in that region. They're both using the oil and keeping the revenues from the oil in a fund controlled by the U.S. Of course, everyone has their own problems. These are the kinds of news stories where you could say some have stale bread, others have small diamonds. If you ask whose bread is stale, it's Iran's bread that's stale. For example, there's been serious chaos in Iran for about 3 months now. They've been hit by a massive wave of inflation, and the dollar has risen to 1,250,000 Iranian rials. So they're really experiencing unbelievable inflation. Workers, tradespeople, and young people have taken to the streets and staged serious protests. But the Iranian regime is responding to the protests with extremely harsh measures. We can say that the main expectation of the protesters is regime change and political demands, and there has been no internet access in the region for a very long time. In Iran, major problems with internet access are still ongoing, and when we ask the Iranian government about the situation, they say this is an intervention by foreign powers, they say. But here's the truth. The Iranian people are extremely unhappy, and things in Iran are only getting worse. So, friends, as we head toward the weekly wrap-up, when we look at the national agendas, except for Japan, there really isn't any country that's satisfied this week. Of course, we can also say that investors in Borsa Istanbul are a bit more content. With the recent upswings, Borsa Istanbul investors have started to feel a bit more satisfied, and in a moment, we'll move on to the charts and discuss the latest situation. When we sum things up here, in my opinion, the most important news in the medium term is this. Powell's term ends in May, and a candidate chosen by Trump will take over as the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Undoubtedly, this new chair will inject more money into the markets and implement more interest rate cuts. So, in my view, during the period when these developments are unfolding, I expect the U.S. stock market to continue facing selling pressure in February and March. We may see even more selling pressure. On the gold side, I think we'll see further increases. And after this trend, we'll be talking about a whole new trend where major stocks in the U.S. market experience significant gains. Meanwhile, the dollar index continues to lose ground. Let's move on to the charts. Let's start analyzing these on the charts. Before we start the analysis, as always, I kindly ask for your support with likes and comments. Your support against YouTube bots and algorithms is really important to me. It's also truly valuable in terms of motivation. Thank you to everyone who supports. And let's start analyzing the charts. Look, first of all, there's a trend we've been following recently in the dollar index. According to my indicator, We've discussed how staying below the 100 level in this cloud indicator shows that it continues to display weakness. In other words, the dollar index is losing value against the euro, the pound, the franc, in short, against the currencies of developed countries. And after losing the 96.5 level, the dollar index is facing even greater losses in value. We track this at the $1.10 level in the euro-dollar parity. Most recently, I explained it to you at the $1.14 level here. Here, the euro-dollar parity continues its movement toward the 1.23 level. In my opinion, not much will change in the next 1 or 2 months. I think the euro will continue to be more valuable than the dollar. Let's start today with the movements on the Borsa Istanbul side. Look, I've repeatedly told you that Borsa Istanbul is showing a positive trend. It has returned to the 14,000 level again. I've been insisting over the past 2 months that I have a particularly positive outlook here. Not only did I say that Borsa Istanbul would rise, I also said that it would rise more and yield more returns than the American stock market. And we've clearly seen this happen. Borsa Istanbul has entered a very strong upward trend. At least, that's how my technical analysis reads it. And at its current level, the 13,500 zone can be considered a support area for Borsa Istanbul. I expect that once it surpasses the 14,000 level, the upward movement in Borsa Istanbul will gain momentum. In my opinion, this upward trend in Borsa Istanbul should continue throughout February. If there is any change in the trends, we will definitely have the opportunity to discuss it again. But I also recommend that you join the YouTube membership chats. You should be part of the level 1 or higher membership group, my friends. If we look at the movement on the gold side, it has started to show a more sideways trend. In the last 3 days, prices have been moving more sideways. For me, the fact that it continues to hold above the $4,960 level is quite positive. So with tomorrow's closings and the weekly closing, a trend will form for me in gold. And next week, I will start following the $5,500 levels. Of course, the employment news that came out yesterday is not very positive for gold in the short term. It's also not easy to predict the short-term movements that may occur. There can be downward movements, but what matters to us is the trend. What matters to us is whether it's cheap, the zones it offers, and whether we've made purchases or not. I've already made my last purchases in gold. I've mentioned this to you as well. I clearly said that I bought gold. I actually talked about my previous purchases very openly as well. When it comes to buying gold, I personally find it more reasonable to follow and buy alternatives like Tether Gold. So I buy Tether Gold on the crypto exchange. For me, this is a product equivalent to gram gold. For me, it's also a product equivalent to ounce gold. There's absolutely no difference between them, and being able to trade it 24/7 is an advantage for me. So it's also an advantage for investors. Of course, it's entirely up to you to follow and evaluate these options. I'm sharing the links for these below the video. You can also evaluate them on the OCAX TR exchange. Look, the Tether Gold chart is right here as well. There's no difference between it and ounce gold, and I track the support levels entirely based on ounce gold. It's also above the cloud region and in a very positive area. You'll find these links below the video and in the video description section. As for what I see on the silver ounce side, on the 4-hour chart, it has started to hold above the $81 level. There's actually a renewed move toward the positive zone in silver as well. Look, $70 and $73 were nice levels as buying zones, but technically entering a positive area is a whole different story. So if silver stays in its current range, with tomorrow's closings coming in above this level, the most likely scenario is that it will move toward the next target, which is around $91 to $97. I'd like to remind you that the current support level for silver here is $81. There hasn't been any significant change in the current support level for gram gold. The current support area is 6,500 TL, and with the weekly closings, it will become around 6,900 TL next week. There's no sign of any loss of strength in gold. I can say that there's a nice accumulation, in other words, a consolidation of strength happening. On the Turkish lira side of silver, the 113 TL level has become an important support level here. With the weekly closings, it will signal a return to positive territory. But I still want to say that gold remains my favorite. In summary, to wrap things up here, when we look at the global news flow or read the trends, what I see and what I think is this: protect your money. So what do I mean? Avoid high-risk trades, avoid leverage transactions, be careful with American stock market trades, And during this period, my favorite still continues to be Borsa Istanbul. On the mount side, my favorite is still gold, and among the products I've mentioned, I don't see any problems or issues in their upward trends. Now let's take a look at the cryptocurrency market. The cryptocurrency market has undoubtedly been the most bearish market compared to the others. So there aren't any major fluctuations in price movements. But last night we had a YouTube members-only chat. We talked about it there as well. The $66,200 level was an important threshold we were watching as a nearby support. And in the cryptocurrency market, we discussed how coins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and Solana are passing through bargain zones and what the indicators are showing in these areas. Last night, during the YouTube members-only chat, we had the chance to talk about and consult on these topics together. We did a Q&A session. Here, we also did a general portfolio evaluation. Like every investor, I also see that the cryptocurrency market has lagged behind, limited profits, and exposed us to losing positions. But when we look at it as a whole portfolio, a potential rebound in the cryptocurrency market will put us in a very profitable position because we've achieved high returns in all the markets we've been following. In the cryptocurrency market, the conditions over the last 1 or 2 months have been weaker than we expected. But when I look at Twitter and so on, I see people who have put their entire balance into small altcoins and are facing very serious losses. At least we are not in such a situation, neither among the members who joined, nor among the followers who watch these standard videos here, because I mostly prefer to talk about the biggest altcoins or Bitcoin. The reason for this preference is that I don't want to do it before money flows into small altcoins and a new trend starts. In fact, I've warned you about this many times. I've mentioned that, in my opinion, it's more reasonable and smarter to gradually convert losses from small cap altcoins into large cap altcoins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or XRP. Anyway, within the current trend structure here, Bitcoin is not showing a technically positive movement. Look, it's not in a technically positive zone. For example, I just showed silver. With tomorrow's closing, silver will have entered a positive zone, but we haven't been able to see this yet in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, at the very least, there is now a need to hold above this area, above the $70,000 level, and it has also drawn a rather tight movement cycle here. And if this movement continues, we can talk about a Bitcoin that will once again enter a large gap area. And in the same way, we're in a very potential area where most altcoins could also break through the cloud region. So look, today, tomorrow, and over the weekend, we need to see the total 3 chart within this area. So what am I trying to say? The market needs to see a bit more recovery on the chart, showing the market cap of altcoins other than Bitcoin and Ethereum. Other than that, honestly, there aren't any major price fluctuations in the cryptocurrency market, nor is there a significant inflow of money into the market or any major news flow worth discussing. But I do have some technical points to make, and from a technical perspective, I think the cryptocurrency market will make up for the price movements it has lagged behind, at least on the scales I follow. I'm still not in a state of serious pessimism compared to the general sentiment, but in my opinion, what needs to happen to be more optimistic and to make more evaluations in smaller altcoins is also very clear. We need to see that the cryptocurrency market is technically in a positive trend. Other than that, there really isn't much more to add. Other markets are very active. The cryptocurrency market is still moving slowly in a weak flow that doesn't excite investors. Let's wrap up the video by saying that over there too, we would encounter a trend that makes investors happy and satisfied. No matter what the prices are, I hope you're always in good spirits. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Subscribing to my channel and turning on notifications is an investment advice for yourself. Before developments even develop,